Hi everybody, here's a screenshot of Janella Massa and Susan Gapka talking about Laurel Hubbard, who will be the first transgender athletes to ever compete at the Olympics. I'm going to put the camera on me now. Hi everybody, I'm Jennifer McCreath. Today is June 26th, 2021. I believe that interview was filmed yesterday. News broke 2 or 3 days ago that for the first time a trans woman will be competing at the Olympic Games. Very good interview, Janella and Susan. One thing you guys did not touch upon, though, was the fact that trans people have been eligible to compete in the Olympics, not since 2015, but since 2003. Way back in 2003, there were some trans athletes that felt they may be close to making their national teams, so they went to the International Olympic Committee and said, we would like you guys to put together a policy that will determine if and how we can compete and do so fairly. And the very first Olympic trans guidelines were created. The document was called the Stockholm Consensus, and it came out in 2003 in anticipation of the 2004 Olympics. As it turned out, these trans athletes did not quite qualify for their national teams, so they did not make the Olympics. But yeah, this has been on the International Olympic Committee's radar now for 18 years. For all you people that want to say trans people have a competitive advantage, especially trans women, and I can't personally speak to weightlifting because I'm not a weightlifter. I can speak to transitioning, and I can speak to being a pretty darn good marathon runner, not Olympic level, but top 10 percentile, pre-transition. The ultimate holy grail for marathon runners, at least most of us, is qualifying for the Boston Marathon. Only 10% marathon runners are fast enough to meet the qualification standard for Boston. I met that standard as a male, which meant I was pretty darn good male marathon runner. And I then transitioned. And now I know the rules changed in 2015. Back in 2003, the Stockholm Consensus required detransition and feminization. Now back then, words like non-binary weren't really on the radar. I'm what I call a traditional transsexual. I'm not just changing my name and my clothing. I literally am changing my sex. I had my balls physically removed. Balls are what create testosterone. And you get rid of those, you don't have testosterone anymore. And then you take estrogen, either by pill or by patch or by needle. And you take a ton of estrogen to feminize your body. For more than 10 years now, I've had testosterone levels that are below the average female, natal female level. And I've had estrogen levels that are as high as 10 times what a female would have. And I saw my marathon times go way down. I went from being a top tier male athlete to a mid-packer to a back of the packer. Within a year, I was nowhere near the female standard. Here I actually thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to become a female, and I'm going to be a female athlete, and I'm going to dominate the world. Well, it's not that easy. I literally, in 2008, ran a marathon in 3 hours and 16 minutes. 2 years later, I was barely able to run a marathon in 5 hours. It slows you down. You lose your muscle mass. I heard people talking about the disadvantage of having male bone structure. Hormones affect your bones. And it can actually be a disadvantage to have heavier bones in sports, depending on the sport. If you're running a marathon and you have heavier bones, that's more weight. If you ever studied physics, you know force equals mass times acceleration times distance. So the heavier you are, the more work it requires to move that body and run that marathon. So I, as a heavier person, I was burning more calories running a marathon. Again, I'll go back to Susan Gapka and Janella's interview. If trans people really did have a competitive advantage, we would be all over the Olympics. We would have been all over the Olympics for the past 18 years. We would be winning all these events. But no. And there are other Canadian athletes. I mean, trans athletes all over the world, but I'll throw out a few names. Kristen Worley, Michelle Dumaresque, elite level trans women athletes that work their butt off to be great athletes. And they were training literally like pros, even though they're amateur athletes. 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and guess what? They never could quite make the Olympics. Now, when we talk about the other side of this argument is, I guess that's where we get to the transgender part of the question as opposed to the transsexual. What about the young kid who identifies as trans, but for whatever reason is not able to start the transition process? If you have a bunch of 10-year-olds, is it fair or unfair for a 10-year-old trans person to play for the other side? I don't know. I don't think 10-year-olds are going to go to the Olympics at that age, so that's a different topic and conversation altogether. Non-binary people in sports, that's a whole other conversation that is evolving. Yeah, let's not, all you armchair quarterbacks who have not studied this, put your faith in the International Olympic Committee. They've been looking at this for 18 years. And Laurel Hubbard from New Zealand, Laurel might not win a medal. Laurel might finish fourth. And in the end, you won't be able to say cheating or competitive advantage, whatever. If Laurel wins, it's because Laurel worked her butt off and trained harder than others. It's no competitive advantage. And let's just try to be nice and respectful to everyone. As Susan Gapka mentioned, trans people face a lot of obstacles in life, a lot of hate. I can relate to that. I've lost my job. I've had challenges getting the healthcare system to work with me. So I thought as a trans athlete, who, by the way, if you don't know my story, I went to the World Out Games in 2009, which is an organization that stemmed from what was known as the Gay Games, an LGBT-themed sporting event. Said, if you're going to be T-inclusive, how about we create a space for trans athletes? At that time, I was early in my transition. I recognized it was not fair for me to compete yet at that time as a female. So I said, let me show up, compete as a trans person. I don't need to win anything. I just want to be there. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. And I ran the marathon and was recognized as the one and only trans person to complete the 2009 World Out Games Marathon, as well as a 1,500 meter swim. I'd like to hope that played a small role in opening some doors. Just because you're trans doesn't mean you shouldn't be allowed to participate in sports. We've got the scientists and the medical professionals looking at the fairness situation, and we got to trust them. So yeah, park your stereotypes and your prejudices at the door, and let's defer to the science and the experts. And let's appreciate and celebrate the diversity that we are seeing. Laurel has had a challenging life, as I understand it, and has overcome a lot of demons, and it's great to finally see a trans person in the Olympics. It's something I've been waiting for all these years. And yeah, let's just keep the conversation moving, and let's stick to the facts and stick to the science, and let's not allow false news and bigoted, discriminatory decisions to play into this. Good work, Susan. Good work, Janella. Great interview. And happy Pride Month to everyone. I'm Jennifer McCree. Thanks for watching.